Welcome to the Immigrant's Path, showcasing the successes, challenges, and the many paths to America. Brought to you by Sarraf Gentile LLP, a New York-based law firm representing individuals nationwide on immigration and other complex litigation matters.
Hi, welcome to the Immigrant's Path. Today's episode, my guest is Juan Palacio. He is the founder and CEO of bloomsybox.com. This is just a really classic American success story. Juan came here as a young adult, really without much money or without much of anything, and over time, just through his intelligence and sheer persistence, he's built a tremendously successful business in the flower industry. So it's a wonderful success story, and I think he provides such a model and such a template for others that are also looking to achieve their American dream through entrepreneurialism, whether you're an immigrant or not. So enjoy this episode. Thank you. All right. Welcome to another episode. Today, our guest is Juan Palacio. He is the founder and CEO of bloomsybox.com. Welcome. Happy to have you.
Hi, Joe. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. So for people that aren't familiar with you, just to go through your background a little, sorry, where are you originally from?
I'm from Bogota, Colombia.
And how old were you when you first came to the U.S.?
24.
Oh, wow. Did you speak fluent English when you came?
No, I didn't. Nothing. I mean, if you think that I have an accent right now, you should have seen me 20 something, 21 years ago.
Yeah.
I struggled, yeah, with my accent. I didn't speak a word.
So when you were growing up in Colombia, what were your impressions of the United States, like positively and negatively? What did you associate with it when you thought of it?
I mean, we were, heavily influenced by the American culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to say that I am a product of the American 80s, because the American 80s had a heavy influence in our society.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Colombia back in the 80s was going through, the crazy growth of the drug trade, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But we were influenced by not only TV and, the music, everything was, and you would look up and you would say, okay, I want to have what you see on the TV shows and, the clothes and eat the food, right? So you would see a lot of food chains that were kind of trying to replicate what was happening here in the States. So,
Mm-hmm.
Burgers and fried chicken, etc. So I want to say that I was heavily influenced by the American culture throughout my life. I've been actually.
And throughout your life, were you one of those kids that was always entrepreneurial, or was that something that kind of came later?
That came later.
Mm-hmm.
That came later.
When you were 24 and you came to the US, why'd you decide to come here? What brought you here?
It was a combination of multiple factors. Colombia back in the 90s was in a bad place, right?
Mm-hmm.
The country, you can actually say that it was going through a civil war, right? Because it was at war with drug lords, it was at war with the guerrillas, and I mean, and for us, it was very hard. I was finishing college.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, while I was finishing college, I was working, and I was not happy with what I was seeing as my future. So I was probably a year left in college, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see where I'm going here, right? The future was so uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister was living here. She actually was in Minneapolis, and I started talking to her, and I'm like, I want to give this a try. I want to see if I can actually find better opportunities if I go to the States. And that's probably the main reason why I decided to come here.
And you came here through a job offer, or did you come here first and then look for work? Like, how'd you do that?
So I actually had a job offer for working with flowers. It's part of my story, sort of. And I actually had I don't know exactly what's the legal term of that job offer, but it was like an H-1B visa, basically. And that's how I came.
What were you initially doing in the flower industry when you first came here?
So I was just selling flowers. I was the person responsible for getting the flowers and the farms, putting together the farms, connecting the farms with the company here. And I started selling flowers to hotels. While I was doing that, I started to sell flowers to hotels, and I ended up basically running the business. That's how I started.
So you got a job working for a company and you ended up basically taking over the company?
Well, yes, because their initial business plan didn't work the way they had planned. They had this business plan and this idea of selling flowers to mainly hotels in Orlando, Florida. And actually they had some customers, but the business plan failed dramatically because they didn't consider many aspects, right? That the customers, that the hotels were not going to do their own bouquets. They thought that they were going to be able to just have, flowers in bulk delivered to the hotels. And of course, at the beginning, they had some customers, but it was not a proven model. And when I started selling, and we were like, you know what, why going to Orlando when we have hundreds of hotels in Miami? Let's start, just knocking on doors and seeing if these hotels can actually are willing to buy flowers from us, right? So, and that's why I ended up doing. It was just a matter of proving the model. Okay, let's see if we can actually sell flowers to hotels. And I literally started, selling flowers to hotels. At the end of the day, someone had to do it. I started doing it, and I started getting good at it, right? So I started getting customers, hotels saying, yes, you know what, I'm gonna buy flowers from you. And that evolved into saying, if I'm capable of going to a hotel, door to door, I can probably just sell flowers to flower shops because they actually need flowers. And we're talking about farms in Colombia that were producing, flowers in bulk, and then trying to make better margins than selling the flowers through the typical distribution chain. So that's why they decided to go to the hotels. Again, the model was not effective. It was not generating enough volume. So I ended up selling flowers door to door to hotels, and then I evolved to door to flower shops. And back then, the industry was so different. It was basically, you had the producers in South America, you had importers in the US. 90, and this is the case still, 98% of the flowers that come to the US come through Miami. So Miami was this place in which, anybody with a couple of contacts could easily open a flower distribution, late 90s, early 2000s. So there was this, unique situation in which all these importers were buying flowers from multiple farms and just trying to sell to the same wholesalers. So basically what I saw was, why don't I just get all these, because it works, it's basically like an exchange, right? So you have the same type of product, and customers, these importers were calling cold calling wholesalers saying, hey, I have, 10 boxes of this type of flour. It's the same type of flour across. So what I decided was, I'm going to build this website and I'm going to start uploading their daily inventory onto this website. It was called theflourexchange.com. And it was just the idea of why calling the flour shops, why calling wholesalers. Let's build a website and let's see if they can actually get this product. And I was acting just as the middleman.
All right.
I was getting all this inventory on a daily basis from all the importers in town, uploading the inventory onto a website and getting orders from wholesalers and flour shops.
So it sounds like kind of a flour version of Alibaba in some ways.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And is this the business? I did a little research on you before we got on, and is this the business you had initially sold? Did you sell this? Okay.
Yeah, I sold the business, but after 9 years, yeah.
What was in terms of learning American business culture, what was the learning curve like for you? Was there an adjustment in terms of learning, I guess, the culture of doing business here versus the culture of doing business in Colombia?
No, absolutely. So different. I like to say that we as Hispanics are very colorful people. And I mean it in a really respectful way and in a good way, right? So we like to, literally put a lot of color to things. So when you're working, when you're working on a contract or giving an order or something, from the most basic action on a vendor buyer relationship, like saying, okay, I'm going to give you a purchase order. We do it differently in Colombia. So you basically say, yeah, I'm going to buy you eventually. And you understand that, right? Again, it's part of our culture. So coming from that culture in which everything is informal, informality is the rule. You basically you don't commit to anything. And it works both ways, right?
Right.
You don't commit to anything, and you as a vendor can actually come up with excuses. Oh, sorry, you know what? You order red roses, but look, I have these beautiful hot pink roses.
Right.
And they will let it fly because that's the culture. So, the first learning is you don't do business like that here, right? You can just commit to something and then do the opposite, or just don't do what you committed to. And I'm pretty sure that if someone is listening and someone with a similar background to mine is listening, would relate, would say, you know what? Yeah, he's right. And the lack of formality, probably, if you ask me, is the main aspect on just learning to do business here different than Latin America.
And was it an easier transition for you being based in South Florida because it has such a heavy Hispanic and Latin American influence that maybe the business culture is a little, I don't know, somewhere in between maybe?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it was, I always like to say that Miami is Latin America. Is the first country of Latin America, Miami. And lately it has become even more so, right? But yes, it helped the fact that there are so many Hispanics in Miami, helped a lot getting, adjusted. And at the end of the day, you just get adjusted and you understand the rules of the game, right?
And so you sold the company, and just reading from a past interview, you had mentioned in a past interview that one of the reasons that you sold it was because of scalability, that you didn't see it being scalable to the size that you were ambitious to grow a company. What was the missing piece with that made it, in your view, less scalable?
That business, it was a great business idea. We were selling flowers to the end consumer online, actually, and it scaled from the beginning of selling flowers door to door and then building this website. It scaled, but um, it was a combination of the market wasn't ready for, like, when you need to think that this is like 2008, 2007, when, okay, you were, yeah, of course, e-commerce was pretty mature back then, but still, when you're, let's say you're planning a wedding, you're planning an event, you would still go to your local flower shop, your local wholesaler. So scaling in the sense of acquiring new demographic, new market was really hard, right? Convincing someone that, hey, you can actually get flowers online. You go online, search for, you need 1,000 stems of roses. Don't worry, we'll get them to you. So for someone in Kansas, out of this blue, say, okay, where are these people located? They're gonna get me flowers from Colombia. Wait a minute, that's really far. How are they getting these flowers all the way from Colombia to me, right?
Yeah.
So it was a concept. It is not what you understand today about, okay, how easy it is to get easy, quote unquote, to get, products from point A to point B. So one aspect, and I'm gonna just stick to your question. One aspect was the fact that the actual market was not ready for a service like the one we were offering, the product, right? And second, so throughout those years, I actually sold half of my business to two business partners. So there were three of us. And they didn't share the same vision. I thought that we were going to be able to expand to more of the occasion market, which was, expanding so quickly. And they just didn't see it. So I think that for me, it was really hard to say we are just hitting a wall in terms of how big we can get this business to grow. And I was in a really, I want to say that I was just very comfortable, right? I'm not saying that we made a lot of money. No,
Right.
we were doing very well. We had a stable business, but we were hitting a wall, and I saw it coming. So I started losing, I don't know if the word is passion, but I think that, yes, my passion was not the same. And I was being very passionate about learning more about customer acquisition strategies and online marketing. And that's basically what I ended up doing.
And you went to work for other companies for a few years before you started Bloomsy Box, right? Basically, I'd say acquiring skills in those areas that you wanted to learn more about. At the time when you're leaving your first business, those skills that you wanted to acquire or get better at, did you view those as strengths that you wanted to get even stronger, or were they weaknesses that you wanted to kind of shore up?
Weaknesses, absolutely. Like, and I needed perspective. I didn't have perspective because I knew enough to continue growing the business to the scale that business was going to grow, but not to see anything else beyond that. And I started, researching and reading, etc. And I realized that there were some things that, like, hey, I don't know anything. I don't, you think you know things, right? Like, oh, I think I'm learning about this and I'm getting good at this. But then I came to realize that there was a big aspect of online marketing that I didn't know about. And I decided that I needed to work for someone who can actually provide me with the tools to learn. And I started working for a company that was in the online travel business, which is crazy competitive. One of the most competitive, because you are selling the same product as everybody else and you cannot add any value. You're basically trying to get the same customer as everybody else. And you're actually competing with the hotel.
Mhm.
So, but it was an amazing experience. We worked very close with Expedia. We actually were reselling Expedia's inventory, and I actually expanded my vision and just learning about customer acquisition and how aggressive online travel agencies are to acquire users and the metrics that they pay attention to more than anything else, right? What do you need to pay attention to when you're trying to scale? And of course, try to scale while still being profitable. And how can you continue going after new segments of the market?
So it sounds like there's a few things going on in this process. I mean, from the earlier part of your story, when you're going door to door selling selling your services in the first business, and you're having success. I'm guessing you're having success because you have some really good sales skills. That you had good sales skills for a long time, and the missing piece was not necessarily the face-to-face sales, but it was how to market at scale, which is really a different skill set. And then once you're able to market at scale, how are you able to handle all that workflow? And that's kind of learning how to delegate and learning how to build out a system and a structure to kind of handle it. Was that also part of it? Learning how to kind of handle that large flow once it starts coming in?
Yes, I guess part of it was it.
Mhm.
Because and it's actually what I enjoy the most. One of the things that I enjoy the most about being an entrepreneur is that you decide those processes. You
Yeah.
define how the processes are going to flow. And for good or for bad, those processes are actually part of your own vision of the business. And yes, I think that the word here, to your point,
Mhm.
was lack of perspective, or
Mhm.
not lack of perspective, right? I needed to have that perspective in order to have, again, of course, perspective gives you understanding of this, how to see the business as a unit that you can scale the way you think about it, the way you envision it.
I always found this part to be the most interesting part of your story for me. This kind of period in between the two companies, because it kind of, the way you describe it, it sounds like you have this really strong sense of self-awareness in terms of, at the time at least, what your strengths and weaknesses were. And you had the lack of ego to kind of step back and address it and grow. And there's a real emphasis on learning as part of what you're doing. It's not so much that it's not, you're not in a rush in a way. And I mean that in a positive sense, that you're emphasized on learning and not necessarily the results 5 minutes from now. And it seems like that was I don't know, it's such a big part to set you up for the eventual, really large success that you're having now. So, it's not part of a story I hear very frequently.
And it was not planned like that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
of course, if you look back, you're like, oh, of course, now everything fits perfectly, right?
Yeah.
It was really hard for me because it put a lot of stress, just the fact that I was going to, and again, and you need to understand this with context. I was by my own boss by what, 9 years, 10 years.
Right.
I
Right.
then started working for someone else. It was very hard. Thank God the group that I work with, they understood my background. They understood, that I wanted to just take something and run with it in a good way and try my best. And the approach that I took when I was offered this position was like, I'm going to try to make it as much as mine as possible, right? Closer to mine. And the ownership is another discussion, right? But I didn't have ownership, but I wanted to make it as as mine as possible again. And that's the approach that I took. At the end, it helped me a lot. We did great. I want to say that they were happy with my performance. You always like to think that people were happy with you. But I want to think that they were happy, and we actually still to this day have a great relationship, with the owners of that company.
Right.
They taught me a lot, and not only that, I'm very grateful because they trusted me with, a business that I didn't know anything about, and they trusted me with some really decent domain names that were performing, right? So you're right. This was if you look at my story, these years, almost 5 years, were critical, and were actually, I needed to do that in order to, take the next step, which was Bloomsy.
Yeah. So what gave you the idea to get back into the flower business after that much time away?
So I was at a conference. This was 2013, and just to give the listeners the context, I sold the business in 2009, and I worked for this company from 2010 through 2014. And I was at a conference back in 2013, and I learned about Birchbox, the cosmetic subscription. And I was blown away by the model, right? So this model of subscription and recurrent revenue, and you acquire one user and you extend the lifetime value of your user by shipping cosmetics. And it's a very simple business proposition, right? Okay, it's like the club, the clubs that have been forever, right? And I learned about this. I started thinking about, and when I was working for this company, of course, once you have the entrepreneurial, once you taste it, you always want to have it back. I was missing that adrenaline. I was missing that, and I started to feel it more and more. And by, I want to say, middle 2014, I started researching, subscription models based on what I had learned from Birchbox and like what I had seen. And I started researching for subscription models, and I quit my job by the end of 2014. And I started working on a business plan that later became Bloomsy. It was just subscription. I thought of a couple of ideas, and then I quickly realized that flowers and subscriptions was a great model, was a great idea. No one was doing it. And that's why I decided to just quit my job and get back on, the entrepreneurial journey. And I started working on Bloomsy. Later became Bloomsy. I didn't have the name, etc. But I started working on the business plan by the end of 2014. All 2015 was Bloomsy.
And did you find the flower business changed a lot in the time that you were away?
Not really. I mean, the pillars of the industry, the main components of the industry were still there, right? The farms, and of course, there was a lot of consolidation. And if I had tried to replicate what I did with the flower exchange back in 2015, it would have been impossible because there was a lot of consolidation, right? Of course, the industry evolved, and consumers were more educated than 15 years ago or 20 years ago. But the industry still had the main players, right? The Pro Flowers and the 100 Flowers of the world, just focusing on the occasions, Valentine's and Mother's Day, one-time bouquets, right? Just going after the customer that was trying to buy 1999 bouquets. So that's what I found when I came back.
One thing you did that seems to have distinguished you for your business from a lot of other players in the market was your commitment to sustainability and the suppliers that you work with. Can you describe that a little?
Yeah, we only work with, so there are multiple certifications in the flower industry. And the certifications, I'm just going to give more context. The certifications speak to farms treating their employees in a fair way, paying the wages and taking care of their families. You need to understand that these farms in South America are located at communities that are very affected, poor communities, basically, low-income communities. And one of the certifications is the rainforest certification. What they do is make sure that this farm not only treat well their employees, but are growing the flowers with sustainable practices, meaning the water, how the way you recycle the water, what you do with the soil, what you do with everything that all your waste, right? And for us, this is still the main reason why we buy from one farm or we don't buy from a farm, right? We have to make sure that the farms that we're dealing with are sustainable in the full spectrum of the definition of sustainability, right? Again, you treat your employees, because there was a lot of discussions about, and a lot was written about farms not treating their employees fair. A lot of farms doing, just practices and taking advantage of these communities. So we pay a lot of attention to farms that are giving back to the communities, farms that are treating their systems the right way. Again, going back to the water, going back to the waste management, etc. And I think that customers are actually seeing the value in this type of practices. And at the end of the day, we're able to provide our users with a better product. And it's not a marketing hack. It's not something that we're saying just to sell more. No, it's true, right? Because these products, at the end of the day, you can plan better, right? You can have these products, and the flowers that we're sending to our customers have a better base performance. They last longer. They have better opening. It goes back. It's a circle. It's a full circle, and that's why we have focused so much on sustainability.
Aside from the news stories that you mentioned, either from growing up in Colombia or working in the flower industry earlier, did you have any personal exposure to the living conditions, I guess, for people that were working on these flower farms through that? Did you personally see it or experience? You did?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. So I've seen both, right? I've seen farms, smaller farms, that are working on a more informal fashion. Informal meaning not having this type of structure in place. And I've seen farms that are working with certifications and that are being certified, that are keeping their certifications, and you see the difference, right? So these people that are working there, and you need to understand that when you're going through a post-harvest, you need a lot of people, because there are not, the fact that we're dealing with flowers makes it really hard to automate this, right? There are no robots that can actually do the job of a person. So you have all these people working, just taking the flowers, making the bouquets, making sure that they are, whatever, they meet the criteria of whatever flower we're talking about. And when you have the right environment, when you take care of their families, when you take care of, you see how much they care for the product they're dealing with and how much they care for the job they have, right? So you're gonna do it right. You care about your job, you care about everything that you do on a daily basis, you're gonna do it right. And it goes back to my previous point. You're gonna pack a better product, you're gonna make a better job inspecting the flowers, you're gonna make a better job making sure that the flowers are meeting the expectations, etc., etc., etc.
And so that kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to discuss, which is the customer experience for somebody that's doing business with Bloomsy Box. Um, what are you guys providing in terms of an experience that's unique, that people that are purchasing flowers for either their home or their business are not able to get that customer experience going through a different channel or a different retailer?
So aside from the fact that we are vertically integrated because
Mhm.
we're dealing with the farms, etc., is the fact that we spent a lot of time curating our product. So, and I always like to say, because it's true, you have two types of subscriptions: the replenishment subscription, diapers,
Mhm.
is the perfect example, and you have the discovery subscription. So the discovery subscription is, how am I going to learn something new about a product through a subscription? In this case, flowers. How am I going to discover new flower varieties, etc.? So when you're asking me from a customer service, from why are you different? Customer service, number one, we're gonna make it so that since you are receiving flowers on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis from us, we know exactly that we're sending the right product, and our challenge is to keep you engaged. So we're gonna be keeping you engaged. We have a very open customer service policy,
Mhm.
and I'm not afraid of saying it openly. If you're not satisfied, we'll send you a new bouquet.
Mhm.
If the bouquet is not fresh during 7 days, we'll send you a new one.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can call. You have a subscription with Bloomsy Box. You don't like the flowers that we send you because they didn't last, because of whatever reason. This is a product of Mother Nature. We'll replace it.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, we're trying to provide our users with a different experience. Like, okay, let us teach you how to take care of the flowers, what flowers are different. You're not gonna find our flowers at the local grocery store. You're not gonna find our flowers, the ones that you receive on our subscriptions. You're not gonna see them. Typically, these are flowers that are not commercially developed. We work with breeders. We work with breeders that are trying to introduce new varieties to the market. We're trying to add value by offering our users that component of uniqueness, right? Okay, this is new, this is different. I want to keep receiving these flowers on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis, because look, they send me a rose that is purple, whatever, right? And that goes back to our customer service and our promise. It's just simple. We're not trying to make any claims that we don't own. We make the simple claim of, we're gonna try to surprise you, and we're gonna try to teach you on flowers,
Mhm.
and we're doing it through the subscription. And if you're not happy, we're sending you new bouquets. That's fine. We have an amazing customer service team in Louisville, and we actually try to. We believe in branding through customer service, right? It's really hard. It's
Mhm.
very hard, but we're trying to build our reputation on customer service.
Is Zappos something you've looked at as a model for that?
I'm an advocate of Zappos. I'm a, I'm just, I read all the books and all the interviews, and
Yeah,
I
I have as
actually
well.
gave you did.
Yeah.
I gave the Zappos book to all of our customer service team,
Yeah.
and asked them to read it. I mean, of course, they had the option of not reading it, but I asked them to read the Zappos book, and I actually have a book autographed by Tony Shea
Hmm.
myself. So I mean, I'm a big Zappos fan.
Right. You've also done some really impressive collaborations. I saw you did one with Martha Stewart. If I'm right, you're currently doing one with the New York Botanical Gardens.
Correct. We did one with Martha Stewart. That was an amazing experience for
Yeah,
us.
I can imagine. I mean, is that
They
something
are,
that got you a lot of attention?
yeah,
Yeah.
it did. It opened a lot of doors for us, and actually we learned a lot. They are an amazing brand. They have an amazing team. We were fortunate enough to actually work with Martha Stewart. That was like I had to pinch myself and like, oh yes, I'm sitting in the same room with her, because they build this brand, and you don't build this brand if you don't aim for excellence, right? They're very strict. Oh, they're hard. I mean, in a good way. I'm not saying this in a negative way. We learn a lot. Very strict with their parameters and yes, and then more recently we started working with the New York Botanical Garden. We are extremely happy with the collaboration we have with the New York Botanical Garden. They are an amazing organization. They have an amazing team of people, and the fact that the New York Botanical Garden is such a respected entity has given us like the opportunity to work in ways that we weren't able to before, right? Because we have a product that is more elaborated, higher price. The marketing is different, and we knowing that we're actually helping the garden to be better, to do their research, to do everything that they do so well, makes it really easy, quote unquote, for us.
When you got a quiet minute by yourself and you're kind of thinking about, going from the age of 24 to first coming here to Florida to now where you're doing collaborations with Martha Stewart in the New York Botanical Gardens, and I've read you've built your business to do over $20 million in revenue. When you look at that massive amount of space that you've covered in that time, what comes to mind for you? What do you think about it?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's just persistence is, and I'm gonna go back to our Sappos point, is chasing the vision, not the money. I swear I haven't chased the money. It's chasing the vision. It's just going after that image you have of yourself, and if you want to build something bigger than yourself, and this is what I'm aiming for, right? Building something that I can feel proud of, something that you think convey your values as a person and what you want to do. And I think that's probably the conclusion that I would give you, right? I mean, all these years, of course, at the beginning, when I was broke. I didn't have money. I was just struggling, and I was bootstrapped and just trying to find ways to generate some revenue. But when you get that aspect taken care of in a way that, okay, I'm fine, I can pay my rent, and I can eat, then then is when you start shaping the vision of yourself. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years or 15 years. And Bloomsy Box is basically the result of all of my experiences all together in one single vision, what I wanted to do, and is what I work for.
So along those lines, if you were talking to somebody that was thinking of immigrating to the US or has recently immigrated and they're thinking of going the entrepreneurial route, what advice would you have for them?
To be persistent, probably that's the first one. The main one, to be persistent, is not an easy journey. It's actually very hard. And you need to be passionate about it. If you're not passionate about it, you're gonna hate it. And if you're planning on coming here, this is the place to do it. This is the best place to do it. I don't want to say the only, of course not, but it's probably the best place to do it. If someone like me with no English, no contacts, no nothing, I was able to, just do something. It's just to prove that the system is built for rewarding the hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And just the essence of being an entrepreneur is pushing and working hard. You don't, if you think you're going to make money being an entrepreneur and that's actually what you're aiming for, and you want to work 9 to 5, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So hard work is the key essence of being an entrepreneur. And if there's a place to do it, is here.
Mm-hmm.
There's no better place.
Yeah, I agree with that. So if somebody wants to learn more about you or your company, where would you send them to? Where should they look?
Well, they can go to bloomsybox.com. If they want to learn about me, they can go to my LinkedIn profile. I'm not very active on social media.
Mm-hmm.
My private life is just private. I just don't spend too much time on social media. So if they want to learn more about me, on LinkedIn and just go to bloomsybox.com, and they will find out everything that we have been talking about.
Is there anything that we didn't go over that you'd like to discuss or bring up before we go?
Not really. Probably I would like to add something to your previous question. You were asking me about the lessons, right? I think that you should stick to your gut feeling. And that's something else that I learned, right? So sometimes you make decisions that you're not at peace with,
mm-hmm.
and you know it. And again, being an entrepreneur is also just making decisions. Of course, you have a lot of information, but you need to make decisions that are based on your gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is this right? How do I feel? So just trust your gut feeling always.
Mm-hmm.
I've ignored my gut feeling in a couple of situations, and the result has been, the opposite of what I was aiming for.
Right.
That's something else. That's just trust your gut feeling. I'm not saying you're gonna be right all the time, of course not, but it might help you to listen to your gut feeling.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. This was great, Juan. Thank you for taking the time. I think a lot of people are really going to find a lot of value in this discussion. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe, for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.